Considering the lack of tomb raiding in this game, it's a really good game. When I decided to try Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, it was between this and Uncharted 4 for the next main story game for me to play, and I think I made the right choice. At the beginning of quarantine in 2020, I decided to play through Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 all in a row, and while I had an absolute blast playing them, by the time I got to number 3, I thought there was very little progression in game design. The levels were bigger and looked more epic, but the reused ideas were extremely noticeable. The trilogy was a blast, but honestly, it didn't leave me hungry to play number 4. Moving on to Tomb Raider, this game has so many ideas and mechanics that were exactly what I was looking for. I played the Definitive Edition, so there may be some quality of life improvements from the original, but the ideas would have had to been there in the first place. As I started the game, it honestly didn't hook me in, but as the game went, this to me became the definitive version of Lara Croft. I was completely invested in her as a character and in the story of the game. Towards the end, there was nothing more important to me in gaming than seeing her achieve her goal. The story is a fairly simple one with a little bit of backstory. Not to give away too much, Lara and the crew of the Endurance end up in a violent storm that leaves them stranded on an island. Lara sets out to find her friends and escape the island. Her journey isn't accomplished that easily though. Throughout the experience, she finds out that the inhabitants of the island are worshippers of the Sun Queen Himiko, and they've taken one of her friends. All throughout the game, Lara struggles with the idea of finding some survivors and deciding if it's a good idea to split up to find the others or to stick together. There's a constant fear of finding some people and losing others. The mental struggle she goes through to be able to carry on is shown very well, let alone the physical struggle. She must have 18 broken bones by the end of the game. In the moment, the blood and dirt on her shows the physical trauma she's had to endure, and it seems to fit perfectly. But thinking back, I'm not even sure how she was walking. The gameplay itself is fantastic. Legitimately some of the smoothest third-person controls, especially for a game that originally came out in 2013. Having a bow as her primary weapon is an excellent choice. And while there are upgrades, it's nowhere near as customizable as the bow in Horizon Zero Dawn. The control and smooth aiming of the bow is completely on par with the PS4 classic. Using the D-pad to switch between weapons worked great, and tapping it again to cycle between certain attachments felt really natural. The ability to create her own zipline was fantastic. It really allowed the game to feel like it was much more open than it really was, and it stopped the levels from feeling too linear. From torches to ziplines to creating her own makeshift crowbar, the game really creates the feeling of being stranded and needing to makeshift a solution to a problem. It doesn't matter if the problem is a locked door or reaching an otherwise inaccessible area. The game really gives the exploration someone would be looking for in this style of game. The climbing sequences also didn't overstay their welcome. The vast majority of the time, the climbing felt necessary and never felt like it was just a slow section to get through. There are a few scripted scenes with some QuickTime events, and they usually flowed either from or into full gameplay seamlessly. While they were my least favorite parts to play, they were my most favorite parts to watch. The weird part of the game, something I had no idea about going in, was the lack of actual tomb raiding. You could essentially raid 0 tombs and collect basically no artifacts and still completely enjoy the game. The tombs themselves are optional and usually quick to complete. While it does make sense in game, it caught me off guard as it didn't line up with my expectations going in. Thinking about it logically though, if Lara is in a rush to save a friend, or if there's a need to escape hostile enemies, then taking a 10-minute break to go solving a puzzle in a tomb wouldn't fit contextually in the game. I did think it was a bold move to create a Tomb Raider game, where the tombs take a back seat to the rest of the game, but I think it was a good choice and an important one as well. I think it established who this version of Lara Croft is, how her thought process works, and what type of character I can expect in the follow-up games. I will say that I am expecting Rise of the Tomb Raider to be much more tomb focused, but if it's not, they've gained my trust for me to think they know what they're doing, and I can't wait to see what kind of improvements to her equipment they come up with. Visually, the game is amazing, and yet at the same time, it's super dull. Attacking animations, facial animations, landscapes, and detail within the areas are great. However, the color palette is dark, gray, and bland. Clearly, it was done by design to fit the feel of the story, and it makes complete sense, but I kept secretly hoping for a little bit of vibrant colors to make it more visually appealing. I understand being in caves and raiding centuries old tombs, there's not going to be a lot of vibrant yellow sunflowers or anything. But being outside, it felt like it was overcast the entire game, and I started to miss being able to clearly see enemies in the sunlight. The game is also much more gruesome than I expected. While I was expecting enemy deaths and potentially the death of Lara as I get overwhelmed in certain areas, it was the death animations that really caught me by surprise. I never look at age or maturity ratings for games. Perhaps I should, but I know there's very little that will actually bother me, and the games that would, they have that reputation already, so I'll just avoid those games altogether. At the end of the day, I think the game is fantastic. I think it's a game that more people should play, especially if they enjoy the Uncharted series. Similar wall climbing, gunplay, artifact finding, and other aspects will probably keep these style of games linked in conversation. But I think what Tomb Raider brought to the genre makes the game stand out. I'm really looking forward to playing the follow-up, Rise of the Tomb Raider. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to click the thumbs up before you leave. Make sure you're subscribed for more video game related content, and be sure to share my channel with any friends you think may enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Last year, I played the first 3 Uncharted games in a row, and I think it left me with a little bit of burnout. So I'm going to make sure I put a little bit of space between the Tomb Raider games to keep that from happening again.